The ship, called Stellar Dawn, moved slowly through the dark space around planet Kepler 442c. Dr. Elena Rodriguez looked out the window at the brown and gray world below. She had been waiting for this day for 3 years. Today they would finally land on the planet and explore the old ruins that satellites had found there. Elena was a human scientist who studied old alien things. She was 32 years old with dark hair and brown eyes. She had spent most of her life learning about the mystery people called the Ancients. No one knew who they were or where they came from. They had left behind strange buildings and machines on many worlds, but none of it worked anymore. "Are you ready for this?" asked Dr. Ben Carter as he walked up behind her. Ben was also human and Elena's best friend. They had worked together for 5 years studying ancient ruins on different planets. Ben was tall and had red hair and always made jokes when he was nervous. Elena turned around and smiled. "I have been ready for this my whole life. These ruins are different from the others. The scans show they are much bigger and older." The ship's computer made a soft sound. "We will land in 30 minutes, it said in its calm voice. Elena felt her heart beat faster. She had dreamed of this moment since she was a little girl reading about space explorers. In the ship's main room. The rest of the team was getting ready. There was Zixtal, who looked like a walking crystal person. Zixtal was from a race called the Vorthik and was very old and smart. There was also Quinder, who looked like a big frog that could walk on 2 legs. Quinder was from the water world of Aquaria and knew more about ancient history than anyone else. "The energy readings from the surface are very strange," said Zixtal in a voice that sounded like glass breaking. "I have never seen anything like this before." Quinder made a sound like bubbles popping. "The ancients left this place millions of years ago. Why would there still be energy readings?" Elena walked over to the big screen that showed the planets. Surface. She could see the ruins now as they got closer. There were tall towers made of some kind of crystal that caught the light from the sun. Between the towers were buildings that looked like they were grown instead of built. Everything was covered in symbols that no one could read. "Maybe the energy is just left over from when the ancients were here," Ben said. But Elena did not think so. Something about this place felt different. The ship landed with a soft bump. Elena put on her spacesuit and checked her tools. She had special gloves that could tell her how old things were and what they were made of. She also had a camera to record everything they found. The door of the ship opened, and Elena stepped out onto the planet's surface. The air was thin but safe to breathe. The gravity was a little less than Earth's, so she felt light on her feet. Around her, the crystal towers rose up into the sky like giant trees made of glass. "This is amazing," Ben said as he looked around. "The ruins are in perfect condition. It's like the ancients just left yesterday." The team walked toward the biggest tower in the center of the ruins. Elena could feel something strange as they got closer. The air seemed to hum with a sound too low to hear. The symbols on the walls seemed to move when she was not looking directly at them. Inside the tower, everything was dark and quiet. Elena turned on her light and saw that the walls were covered with more symbols, but these were different. They seemed to glow very faintly, like stars in the night sky. "Look at this," called Quinder from across the room. Everyone hurried over to see what he had found. In the center of the room was a large crystal that was as tall as a person. It was perfectly clear and had many flat sides like a diamond. Around it were smaller crystals that formed a circle. "I have never seen anything like this," said Zixtal. "The crystal is made of a material that does not exist in nature. The ancients must have made it somehow." Elena walked closer to the big crystal. She could feel warmth coming from it even though it looked cold. She took off her gloves so she could touch it with her bare hands. She wanted to know what it felt like. "Be careful," warned Ben. "We don't know what it might do." Elena reached out slowly and put her hand on the crystal surface. It was warm and smooth like glass. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Elena felt a sharp pain in her hand. She pulled it back quickly and saw that she had cut herself on a sharp edge of the crystal. "Are you okay?" Ben asked as he came over to. "Look at her hand." A small drop of blood fell from Elena's finger onto the crystal's surface. The moment the blood touched the crystal, everything changed. The crystal began to glow with a warm golden light. The light spread to the smaller crystals around it, and then to the walls of the room. Symbols that had been dark for millions of years suddenly came alive with bright colors. The air filled with a sound like music made by computers. Lights began to dance in the air above the crystal, forming pictures and shapes that none of them had ever seen before. Elena stared at her bleeding hand, and then at the crystal that was now shining. "Like a small sun? What did you do?" asked Zixtal in a voice full of wonder and fear. Elena looked around the room as more and more things began to turn on. Panels in the walls started to glow and show moving pictures. The floor beneath their feet began to hum with power. Strange. Machines that had been silent for ages started to make soft sounds. "I don't know," Elena said quietly. "I just touched it." Ben took out his scanner and pointed it at the crystal. The numbers on the screen were going crazy. "The energy output is off the charts. This thing is producing more power than our whole ship." The lights in the air began to form shapes that looked like stars and planets. Elena realized she was looking at a map of the galaxy. But this was not like any map she had ever seen. This one showed things that were not on any human or alien star chart. "This is impossible," said Quinder. "We have been studying ancient ruins for thousands of years. Nothing has ever worked. Nothing has ever turned on." Elena looked at the blood on her finger, and then at the crystal. Maybe it was waiting for the right person to touch it. The room filled with more light as systems that had been sleeping for millions of years woke up. Elena felt something changing inside her too. The crystal was not just turning on. It was trying to talk to her. She could feel thoughts that were not her own entering her mind. "We need to call the coalition," Ben said. "They need to know about this right away." Elena nodded, but she could not take her eyes off the crystal. She knew that her life had just changed forever. She had touched something that was older than human civilization, and now it was alive again. But she also knew that this was just the beginning. The crystal was showing her things, telling her things, and she was starting to understand that humans were not just random visitors to this place. They were supposed to be here. 3 days after Elena touched the crystal, ships began arriving at planet Kepler 442c from all over the galaxy. The news had spread fast through Coalition space. For the first time in millions of years, ancient technology was working again, and it had taken only a human touch to make it happen. Elena sat in her small room on the stellar dawn, but she was not alone anymore. The crystal had changed her in ways she did not understand yet. She could hear whispers in her mind, like voices from very far away. Sometimes she would know things she had never learned before. She would look at the ancient symbols and suddenly understand what they meant. "Elena, you need to see this," Ben said as he came into her room. He looked worried and excited at the same time. "More systems are turning on all over the ruins. And it's not just here. We're getting reports from other ancient sites across the galaxy. They're all starting to wake up." Elena followed Ben outside to the crystal tower. In the 3 days since she had touched the crystal, the whole place had changed. Lights moved along the walls like rivers of gold. Machines that had been silent for ages now hummed with power. The air itself felt different, like it was full of electricity. Dr. Frank Thompson was standing near the big crystal with his team of human scientists. Frank was older than Elena, with gray hair and kind eyes. He had studied the ancients longer than anyone else. He had come as soon as he heard the news. "Elena, I'm glad you're here," Frank said when he saw her. "We need to talk about what's happening. Every time one of us touches something here, more systems come online. But it only works for humans. The alien team members can't activate anything." Elena walked closer to the crystal. She could feel it calling to her, like a friend wanting to talk. When she put her hand on its surface, new pictures appeared in the air. This time she could understand some of what she was seeing. "It's showing me things," she said quietly. "Pictures of the past. The ancients didn't just disappear. They left on purpose. They went somewhere else, somewhere we can't follow." Zixtal moved closer, his crystal body catching the light from the machines. "What do you mean they left on purpose? Why would they abandon all of this?" Elena closed her eyes and let the crystal speak to her mind. The pictures became clearer. She saw the ancients as they really were. They looked almost human, but taller and with eyes that glowed like stars. They had built great cities on 1,000 worlds. They had created life itself on many planets. They were getting ready to become something more, Elena said. Something beyond what we can understand. But before they left, they made sure someone would come after them to take care of what they built. Ben looked confused. "Someone like who?" Elena opened her eyes and looked at her friends. "Someone like us. Like humans. They made us, Ben. We're their last creation, and we're the only ones who can use their technology." The words felt strange, coming out of her mouth, but she knew they were true. The crystal was filling her mind with knowledge that the ancients had left behind. Humans were not just another species that had evolved on Earth. They were made by the ancients to be their replacements when the time came. Frank stepped forward. "Elena, are you saying that humans are related to the ancients? That we're their descendants?" "Not descendants," Elena said. "They're successors. They built us to be able to use their technology. That's why it only works when we touch it. Our blood, our DNA, it's all been designed to interface with their systems." Quinder made his bubbling sound of surprise. "This is impossible. Humans are a young species. You have only been in space for a few hundred years. The ancients are millions of years old." Elena touched the crystal again, and more pictures filled the air. She saw the Earth as it was long ago, before humans existed. She saw the ancients visiting the planet and changing things, adding something to the life that was already there. "Time doesn't work the same way for them," Elena said. "They could see the future. They knew we would eventually join the coalition. They knew we would find their ruins. They've been waiting for us to be ready." The room filled with more light as Elena spoke. New machines came online, and the crystal began to project a huge map of the galaxy. But this map was different from any they had seen before. It showed connections between all the ancient sites, like a vast network of light stretching across space. "Look at this," Frank said, pointing to the map. "Every ancient site is connected to every other one. It's like a giant computer network," Elena nodded. "That's exactly what it is. The ancients built it to be activated when humans were ready to take over. We're supposed to be the new guardians of the galaxy." Just then, the communication system in the room came alive. A voice spoke in the common language used by all coalition species. "Dr. Rodriguez, this is Admiral Stone from the coalition fleet. We are requesting immediate transport to the capital world of Nexus Prime. The Council of Species wants to speak with you and your team." Elena looked at Ben and Frank. She could see the fear in their eyes. The coalition was made up of species that had been around for millions of years. They had always thought of humans as the newcomers, the young species that still had a lot to learn. Now they were being told that humans were meant to inherit the most powerful technology in the galaxy. This is going to cause problems. Ben said quietly. Some species aren't going to like hearing that humans are special. Elena knew he was right. She could feel the crystals showing her more things, warning her about what was coming. Not all the coalition species would accept the truth about humanity. Some would try to take the ancient technology for themselves. Others would try to stop humans from using it. We have to go, Elena said. The council needs to hear the truth. But first, I need to understand more about what the ancients left for. You? She placed both hands on the crystal and opened her mind completely to what it was trying to tell her. The pictures came faster now, showing her the real reason the ancients had left. They had not just evolved beyond the need for physical bodies. They had been running from something terrible that was coming from outside the galaxy. Elena saw dark shapes moving between the stars, things that ate light and destroyed whole worlds. The ancients had built their network not just to help their successors, but to defend the galaxy from the things that were coming back. Elena, what's wrong? Frank asked. She had gone very still, and her eyes were glowing faintly like the crystal. The ancients didn't just leave because they were ready to evolve, Elena said in a voice that sounded different, older. They left because they had to. Something was chasing them, something that destroys everything it touches. And it's coming back. The crystal pulsed with brighter light, and suddenly, Elena could see the whole truth. The ancient network was not just a gift to humanity. It was a weapon, a galaxy-spanning defense system that could only be operated by humans. The ancients had created humans, not just to inherit their knowledge, but to fight a war that was coming. We need to get to Nexus Prime, Elena said. The Coalition Council needs to know that this is about more than just humans being special. This is about survival. All of our survival. As the team prepared to leave for the capital world, Elena took one last look at the crystal. She could feel it calling to her, connecting her to every other ancient site in the galaxy. She was changing, becoming something more than human, but not yet ready to understand what that meant. The crystal showed her one last picture. Fleets of dark ships moving through space toward their galaxy, still far away, but getting closer. The ancients had given humans the tools to fight, but only if they could convince the other species to work together. Elena knew that the easy part was over. Now came the hard part, convincing a galaxy full of proud alien species that a young race like humanity was their only hope for survival. The great hall on Nexus Prime was filled with representatives from every species in the Coalition. Elena stood at the center of the room, feeling very small under the gaze of beings who had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. The hall was huge, with walls that reached up so high she could barely see the ceiling. Around her sat creatures that looked like walking trees, others that floated in the air like jellyfish, and some that were just balls of energy in metal suits. Dr. Rodriguez, said Chancellor Vexthul, the leader of the Zentari Empire. He was tall and covered in scales that changed color when he was angry. Right now, they were turning dark red. You claim that humans are the chosen inheritors of ancient technology. This is a very bold claim for such a young species. Elena felt her heart beating fast, but she kept her voice steady. I'm not claiming anything, Chancellor. I'm just telling you what the ancient systems showed me. They've been waiting for humans to activate them. In the week since leaving Kepler 442c, more ancient sites had awakened across the galaxy. Every time a human touched ancient technology, new systems came online. But the other coalition species were not happy about this. Some thought humans were lying. Others thought humans had somehow damaged the ancient sites. The hegemony has sent teams to 12 ancient sites, said Prime Intellect Korth, speaking through a machine that made his thoughts into words. Our scientists cannot activate any of the technology. Yet humans claim they can simply touch these devices and make them work. This seems very convenient. Elena looked around the room at all the alien faces staring at her. Some looked curious, others looked angry, and a few looked afraid. She knew that many of these species had spent thousands of years trying to understand ancient technology. Now they were being told that only humans could use it. "I can show you," Elena said. "Bring me any piece of ancient technology, and I'll demonstrate." Chancellor Vexthel's scales turned darker. "We are not here to watch magic tricks. We are here to discuss the security of Coalition space. Reports say that ancient sites are sending signals to unknown locations. Some of our military leaders think this could be a threat." Elena felt the crystal knowledge stirring in her mind. She had been changed by her contact with the ancient systems. She could understand languages she had never learned and see things that others could not. Right now she could feel the ancient network calling to her from across the galaxy. "The signals aren't a threat," Elena said. "They're a warning system. The ancients left it to tell us when something dangerous is coming." "And what exactly is coming?" asked Counselor Ythara of the Eternal Seekers. She was one of the few beings in the room who seemed friendly to Elena. The Eternal Seekers were old and wise, and they had always been interested in learning new things. Elena closed her eyes and reached out with her mind to touch the ancient network. The pictures came to her immediately, clearer than ever before. She saw the dark space between galaxies and the things that lived there. The Devourers, the ancients had called them. They were beings that ate light and life itself, leaving only empty space behind. "There are things coming from outside our galaxy," Elena said. "The ancients called them Devourers. They destroy everything they touch. The ancients built their network to defend against them, but then they had to leave before the Devourers arrived." The room filled with the sound of many different species talking at once. Some were laughing, others were arguing, and a few were making sounds that Elena couldn't understand. Chancellor Vexthel hit his staff on the floor to make everyone quiet. "You expect us to believe that humans are the only ones who can operate ancient technology, and that this technology is needed to fight some enemy that no one has ever seen?" His scales were now almost black with anger. "This sounds like a story humans have made up to make themselves seem important." "It's not a story," Elena said. "Dr. Kate Morgan has been working with the ancient systems for weeks now. She's learned to read their language. She can show you the records." Dr. Kate Morgan stepped forward. She was a thin woman with blonde hair who had spent her whole life studying ancient languages. Since the systems had awakened, she had been working day and night to understand what the ancients had left behind. "The ancient records are very clear," Kate said. "They faced an enemy that they couldn't defeat with normal weapons. They built a galaxy-wide defense system, then created humans to operate it. They put special markers in human DNA that would allow us to interface with their technology. Prime Intellect Korth's machine made a sound like static. Show us these records. Let our scientists examine them." Kate touched a small device she was carrying. The air above her filled with ancient symbols that moved and changed as she spoke. The ancients were very advanced, but they were also very careful. They didn't want their technology to be used by anyone who might misuse it. That's why they designed it to only work for humans. Elena watched the symbols floating in the air. She could read them now, like words in a book. They told the story of the ancients' last days, when they realized that the Devourers were coming, and they had to make a choice. They could stay and fight and probably lose, or they could evolve beyond physical form and leave the galaxy to their chosen successors. "The Devourers are still far away," Elena said, "but they're coming. The ancient systems can detect them, and they're getting closer every year. We have maybe 50 years before they reach our galaxy." The room became very quiet. Even the species that had been arguing stopped talking. 50 years seemed like a long time to humans, but to species that lived for thousands of years, it was like tomorrow. Even if this is true, said Chancellor Vexthal, why should we trust humans to protect us? You are a young species. You have no experience with threats like this. Elena felt something change inside her. The ancient knowledge was growing stronger, and she could feel connections forming between her mind and the minds of other humans who had touched ancient technology. It was like they were all becoming parts of a larger whole. Because we're not just humans anymore, Elena said. The ancient systems are changing us. We're becoming something new, something that can bridge the gap between what the ancients were and what we need to be. As she spoke, Elena felt her consciousness expanding. She could sense Dr. Frank Thompson working at an ancient site 300 light years away. She could feel Ben's mind as he activated another piece of ancient technology. All over the galaxy, humans were touching ancient devices and becoming part of the network. This is what the ancients wanted, Elena continued. They knew that humans would need to evolve to use their technology effectively. We're becoming the new guardians of the galaxy, but we can't do it alone. We need the cooperation of all coalition species. Chancellor Vexthal's scales were changing color again, but this time they were turning a deep purple, which Elena somehow knew meant he was thinking hard about something. The Xanthari Empire has fought many wars, he said slowly. We have never run from a fight, but we have also never faced an enemy like the one you describe. If these devourers are real, and if they are coming, then we need to be prepared. Prime Intellect Korth's machine made a whirring sound. The hegemony requests permission to study the ancient sites more closely. If human claims are true, we need to understand this technology. Elena nodded. The sites are open to anyone who wants to study them. But remember, only humans can activate the systems. We're willing to work with anyone who wants to help defend the galaxy. Counselor Yathara stood up. The Eternal Seekers have always believed that knowledge should be shared. We support Dr. Rodriguez and her team. We offer our resources to help. Prepare for this threat. One by one, other species began to speak. The Gardner Collective, who had always been peaceful, offered to help coordinate the defense efforts. The Aquarian Republic said they would provide their fastest ships to carry human teams to ancient sites. Even some of the prouder species agreed to work together, but not everyone was convinced. Elena could see that Chancellor Vexthal was still suspicious, and Prime Intellect Korth was already planning ways to study the ancient technology without human help. She knew that some species would try to find ways around the human connection to ancient systems. As the meeting ended, Elena felt a new weight on her shoulders. She was no longer just a scientist studying old ruins. She was becoming something that the galaxy needed, something that could operate the ancient defense network. But she was also becoming something that was less human than she had been before. Walking back to her quarters, Elena touched the small ancient device she now carried with her everywhere. It connected her to the network and to all the other humans who were being changed by their contact with ancient technology. She could feel their thoughts and emotions, their fears and hopes. The easy part was over. Now came the real work of preparing for a war that would decide the fate of every living thing in the galaxy. 10 years had passed since Elena first touched the ancient crystal. Now she stood on the bridge of the Coalition defense station called Unity, watching the space around her fill with warships. The Xanthari Empire had finally made their move, and Chancellor Vexthal was leading a fleet of 300 ships toward the ancient sites. Elena was no longer the same person who had cut her hand on that crystal. Her hair had turned silver white, and her eyes glowed with a soft blue light. She could feel the thoughts of every human connected to the ancient network, and through them, she could sense the pulse of every ancient site in the galaxy. Elena, we're getting reports from the outer systems, said Dr. Amy Richardson, who had become the main voice for humans in coalition politics. Amy was one of the few humans who had not been changed by ancient technology. She had chosen to stay normal, so she could speak for both humanity and the network beings that humans were becoming. The Xanthari are attacking ancient sites in the Vega sector, Amy continued. They're trying to capture the installations before we can activate them. Elena closed her eyes and reached out through the network. She could feel the pain of ancient sites being damaged by weapons they were not designed to resist. She could also feel the fear and confusion of the humans who are trying to protect those sites. They don't understand, Elena said quietly. The sites aren't just machines. They're alive in a way. When the Xanthari attack them, they're killing something that has been sleeping for millions of years. On the other side of the bridge, Ben was working with a team of coalition engineers. He had changed too, but not as much as Elena. His hair was still red, but his eyes now had flecks of gold in them, and he could interface with any technology just by touching it. The defense network is almost ready, Ben said. We have humans at 90% of the known ancient sites, but we need more time to fully integrate the systems. Elena opened her eyes and looked at the main screen. It showed a map of the galaxy, with lines of light connecting every ancient site. The network was vast, reaching into every corner of galactic space. But it was also fragile. If too many sites were destroyed, the whole system might collapse. How long until the Devourers arrive? Asked Amy. Elena reached out with her mind to touch the long-range sensors built into the ancient network. Far beyond the edge of the galaxy, she could sense the dark shapes moving through empty space. They were closer now, close enough that she could feel their hunger for light and life. 3 years, Elena said. Maybe less. They're moving faster than the ancients predicted. The communication system came alive with an urgent message. Unity Station, this is Captain Lisa Hayes from the exploration ship New Horizon. We're at the ancient site on Rigel 7. The hegemony forces are here, and they're trying to force their way into the main control center. Elena felt a sharp pain in her head as she sensed what was happening at Rigel 7. The hegemony had brought machines designed to copy ancient technology. They were trying to reverse engineer the systems, but they didn't understand how dangerous that could be. Amy, give me a channel to Prime Intellect Korth, Elena said. I need to warn him about what his people are doing. Amy worked at her console for a moment, then nodded. You're connected. Prime Intellect Korth, this is Elena Rodriguez. Your teams at Rigel 7 need to stop what they're doing immediately. The ancient systems aren't just computers. They're connected to forces that your people don't understand. The reply came back in the flat, mechanical voice that Korth used. Dr. Rodriguez, the hegemony has the right to study ancient technology. We do not accept human claims of special access to these systems. Elena felt the network screaming warnings. At her, something was going wrong at Rigel 7. The hegemony's attempts to break into the ancient systems were causing feedback loops that could damage the entire network. You're about to cause a cascade failure, Elena said urgently. If you break the wrong connections, you could shut down ancient sites across 3 sectors of space. That is not possible, Korth replied. Our scientists have analyzed the technology. It is simply very advanced computer systems. Elena felt the moment when the hegemony's machines broke through the ancient safeguards. The pain hit her like a physical blow, and she fell to her knees on the bridge of Unity Station. Through the network, she could feel the agony of dozens of ancient sites as they went dark. Elena! Ben rushed over to help her stand. What happened? They broke something, Elena said, her voice shaking. The network is damaged. I can't reach the sites in the Rigel sector anymore. Amy was already working at her console, trying to contact other coalition worlds. We're getting reports of system failures across multiple sectors. Ancient sites are going offline. Elena knew they were running out of time. The Devourers were getting closer. The Xanthari were attacking ancient sites, and the hegemony had just damaged the network that was supposed to protect everyone. She had to make a choice that would change everything. Then, Amy, gather all the humans who are connected to the network. We need to do something that the ancients never planned for. What do you mean? Ben asked. Galena stood up, her blue eyes glowing brighter than ever before. The ancients designed the network to be operated by humans, but they expected us to remain mostly human. They didn't plan for us to become something new. But that's exactly what we need to do. Amy looked worried. Elena, what are you talking about? The network can be repaired, but only if we merge with it completely. We have to stop being human and become something that can exist in multiple places at once. We have to become the network. Ben stared at her. You're talking about giving up our humanity completely. I'm talking about saving the galaxy, Elena replied. The Devourers will be here soon. If we don't activate the full defense network now, everyone dies. Every species, every world, everything. Elena walked to the center of the bridge where an ancient control crystal had been installed. She had been avoiding this moment for 10 years, knowing what it would mean. When she touched this crystal, she would become something that was no longer human. She would become part of the ancient network, spread across the galaxy, existing in every site at once. Elena, wait, Amy said. There has to be another way. Elena shook her head. The ancients faced the same choice. They could remain what they were and probably lose to the Devourers, or they could evolve into something that could fight them. They chose to evolve, and now we have to make the same choice. She put her hands on the crystal and immediately felt her consciousness expanding. She could sense every ancient site in the galaxy, even the ones that had been damaged. She could feel the network repairing itself, using her mind and the minds of other connected humans as bridges between the broken parts. Ben and Amy watched as Elena's body began to glow with the same light as the ancient systems. Her physical form was becoming translucent, like she was made of light instead of flesh and blood. I can see them, Elena said, her voice now coming from speakers throughout the station instead of her mouth. The Devourers. They're at the edge of the galaxy, but the network is ready now. We can fight them. Across the galaxy, humans who had been connected to the ancient network felt the change. They had a choice to make. They could remain human and watch from the sidelines, or they could join Elena in becoming something new. One by one, they made their choice. Dr. Frank Thompson dissolved into light at an ancient site in the Andromeda sector. Captain Lisa Hayes merged with the network at Rigel 7, repairing the damage the hegemony had caused. Hundreds of humans across the galaxy chose to become part of the defense system. The transformation is complete, Elena's voice said from everywhere at once. We are no longer human. We are the guardians of the galaxy. The war against the Devourers was about to begin, but now the galaxy had protectors who existed in every corner of space, who could think at the speed of light, and who understood ancient technology because they had become part of it. Elena Rodriguez, the human scientist who had cut her hand on an ancient crystal, no longer existed as a single person. She had become something vast and powerful, spread across the stars, ready to defend all life in the galaxy from the darkness that was coming. The ancients had chosen to evolve and leave the galaxy to their successors. Now humanity had made the same choice, becoming the new ancients, the new guardians of all life among the stars.